is their misunderstanding of what the wattage classifications mean. I've had people say, why would you use a 1600 watt power supply in your system? You're pushing way too much power and you're going to break something. That's not the way electricity works. Remember, electricity is a draw, not a push. Yes, you can push power with a power supply designed to do that. These power supplies are designed to provide what is being pulled from the components attached to it. So if I have a system that is using, let's say, a Ryzen 3700X and I've got a 3080 attached to it and all the peripherals and stuff, if this 650 watt power supply is able to provide, let's say, the theoretical 550 watts the system needs, and I put a watt stopper on this or a watt meter, and it says it's pulling 550 watts, if I take that same component or that same tower and hook it up to the 1600 watt power supply, guess what? You're gonna see the same wattage. The reason for that is the max rating has nothing to do with the actual power that your components are pulling. So that brings me to the discussion about sizing your power supply. I started this segment by saying I like to run power supplies that are way bigger than I actually need. The reason for that is understanding the efficiency of the power supplies that I talked about earlier in this video. It is actually a bell curve on the way the efficiency curve works. So the closer you get to the max delivery of the power supply, the hotter the power supply gets and the more inefficient it becomes. So you'll have some power supplies that are more efficient than others at 100% utilization versus others at 50 or 60%. So I always err on the side of, just like building a fuel system for a race car, there's no such thing as having too much fuel delivery, to the injectors anyway. If you have the injectors pushing too much fuel, then you just run rich, and that's a whole different discussion. But running lean is a bad thing. And that's the same thing with your power supply. If it's too small, your system runs lean, you start getting random blue screens and or just straight up shutdowns because of what's called overcurrent protection built into pretty much every modern power supply these days. In these power supplies, pretty much from all reputable brands, you're gonna have an internal circuit breaker that when it notices that too much power is being drawn through it, rather than have a component overheat or catch fire, it will flip that breaker that will reset when you unplug it and plug it back in, or flip the switch on the back and flip it back on. Pretty much all power supplies, even the cheapest ones on the market, have this toggle switch, because that's a lot easier than just having to unplug it and plug it back in. So when it comes to sizing your power supply, let's say your system or your graphics card is recommending a 650 or 750 watt power supply. Does that mean your graphics card actually needs 750 watts? No. It means the graphics card manufacturers are accounting for the hypothetical potential equipment that you're hooking up to it. Are you running a Threadripper 32-core system? Or are you running an 8700K 6-core system? See, they don't know that. So they have to account for what you could potentially be hooking it up to and make sure that they have enough overhead in their recommendations to make sure that the power supply that you're using that they recommend is enough to run most systems out there. Now, up to you on whether or not you are going to be putting too much. If you're going to put 50 fans in there and a bunch of water pumps and 62,000 LEDs and fan controllers and lights and monitors and all, like stuff hooked up to the USBs everywhere, then yes, you're going to need a little bit bigger power supply if you're going to be running a high-end graphics card. I usually recommend a 1,000 watt power supply for anyone running any sort of high-end components, whether it be high-end multi-core Ryzen CPUs, water cooling, something that's like an 80 series GPU or higher, or something like a 6800 XT or higher, because then you maintain plenty of power for your system and you stay within that peak range of the curve. That way you also have the most efficient power delivery possible. Now that also gives you a little bit of future proofing. If you build your system and you buy your power supply spec'd at exactly what you have now, and you want to upgrade in the future to a higher end graphics card or a higher end CPU or more core count or whatever it may be, and you find that your system or your power supply is barely able to deliver what you need now, then you're going to be buying a new power supply in the future. The nice thing about power supplies is they're one of the most reusable components in your system as you upgrade as you go, because electricity doesn't change. The plugs haven't changed in decades. They're the same they've always been. SATA is probably the newest plug that we've seen introduced to systems in the last 20 years. So your power supply is extremely reusable. And if you size it up now and get a better power supply now, it can move with you for several generations of upgrades. Let's use the hypothetical somebody running a GTX 1060 5 years ago. That's a very low watt part. It does not use very many watts. It's under 200 watts of power draw. However, If you were running a 2080 Ti or something like that, that was still a 250 watt TDP or graphics card. But if you moved up to a 3080, it was 320 watts. And if you wanted to move up to a 390, it was 350 watts. Some of the highest power draw we've seen from NVIDIA graphics card going all the way back to like the 400 series or even the 200 series prior to that. So that means that a power supply upgrade would have been in your future had you had a graphics card pulling low wattage and you went with a low watt power supply to meet the demands of your system at that time. I hope this video hasn't been too confusing. I tried to keep it as simple as I could. It's really basic. It's really nothing too extravagant here. My recommendations, if you're just like, look, Jay, I just want you to tell me what to get. Fine, I can tell you right now, an 80 plus gold, 850 watt power supply from any reputable brand, whether it be EVGA, Cooler Master, Seasonic, Corsair, whoever else is out there. I mean, Fantex, right? NZXT. A lot of these brands are using the same OEMs, whether it be Seasonic or Superflower. And so what you're gonna find is the internals and stuff are almost identical on all of these. What's different is some of the plugs that you might find. Oh, that's also a very important thing. If you're dealing with a modular power supply, although one plug from one power supply might fit into another, don't feel tempted to use that cable in another power supply. The pinout may be different. I can't tell you how many people have told me they've blown something up because they took a cable from one power supply and plugged it into another. In fact, it's happened here in the past once where Nick actually blew up an SSD of mine because he used a plug from a wrong power supply and bye-bye SSD, and that was a very expensive lesson. But an 850 watt gold rated power supply would be enough to pretty much power any single graphics card, high core count CPU these days, and last you for several years into the future. So I hope this video has helped you guys get some understanding on power supplies. A lot of people really like to overcomplicate it. It's really not that complicated. So if you guys have any topics you think you'd like us to talk about in the future, where we go back to sort of like the beginning or the basics for some of the new people now that are brand new to the PC world, 2020 has probably created more new PC users than we've ever seen in the history of PC. And so I know it's confusing out there when you're just like, there's so much information. It's kind of like when you join an MMO and start with a boosted character at endgame. You have no idea what the hell is going on. So that's what these videos are designed to do, is to give you guys some help. If you have a topic you'd like us to cover, sound off in the comments below. Subscribe if you're new around here, and share this video with someone that maybe you've seen sharing some misinformation about power supplies, so that maybe you can get them on the right side of the conversation, spreading proper information rather than misinformation. Thanks for watching, guys, and as always, we'll see you in the next one. All right, so with a lot of the lower end graphics cards now making their way to announcements, I would say store shelves and maybe your computers, but let's face it, we know that's not happening. I bet that's what I sound like. They're not making their way to your systems or your retail shelves or your e-tailers' warehouses because they're gone already. But we're going to talk about the 60 series graphics cards, and more importantly, now with the 6700 XT announcement, we're going to talk about RAM and the amount of GPU RAM that's available on these cards, and whether or not it's a gimmick, why there's as much as there is, and is it a figure that you really need to consider while you're shopping, hypothetically, for your new graphics cards next year. The all-new 5000D mid-tower airflow case from Corsair features an optimized front panel for maximum ventilation, while the integrated cable management and tempered glass side panel means you can show off more of your components and not your cable mess. To see the full list of specs and to learn more about the 5000D's flexible fan mounting options perfect for both air cooling and water cooling enthusiasts, follow the sponsored link in the description below. All right, so I don't have a 6700 XT here yet, but one of the things that you probably noticed with AMD is almost every one of their graphics cards in the 6000 series just has 16 gigabytes of VRAM. Now, AMD in the past would give you dual SKUs for each card. Let's say you had a 5700 XT. I believe this was actually still the case. Hypothetical, okay, fine, RX 480. You could get an RX 480 4 gigabyte or an RX 480 8 gigabyte. All of the numbers were the same in terms of the stream processors and ROPs and all that. The only difference was the amount of RAM on it. But as we move forward now, it's really started to get really weird in the, like I call that general market, which being the 60 series cards for NVIDIA and the lower AMD ones. The names are all kind of weird now, right? Let's talk about RAM. So the 3060 has 12 gigabytes of VRAM, which made a lot of people confused, myself included, as to why they would put 12 I almost said gigarams, 12 gigarams on a 3060 and 8 gigabytes on a 3060 Ti. The 2060, if you recall, had 6 gigabytes of VRAM. But the reason why I call this extremely confusing is if we go back to the 10 series, which is what NVIDIA is actually comparing all the 3060 numbers to, because they never compare it to the previous gen. They always compare it to the gen before that, because that puts you closer to about a 4-year cycle, which a lot of people tend to upgrade every 4 to 5 years. So you can kind of see what the every other generation improvement is, which is affecting more people than annual upgrades. This was the GeForce GTX 1060. This was the first one that had launched. This is a 6 gigabyte card as well. Then they came out with a cheaper version, which was also a GTX 1060, but this is a 3 gigabyte card. But don't be fooled, we already did a video calling this one out. It had less CUDA cores and less everything, making it not really a 1060 and just a really shady marketing move from NVIDIA on this one. But 3 gigabytes of VRAM, as you guys know today, would absolutely not cut it. So if that's the case, why does the 3060 have 12 gigabytes of VRAM and the 3080 has 10 gigabytes of VRAM? Well, the way that the RAM is actually allocated has everything to do with the bus width. You got 128-bit bus, you have 192-bit bus, 384, and something we haven't seen in a long time, 512. And you'll notice that these are increments, right? The reason why it has 12 gigabytes of VRAM is because they would have had to have been stuck with either 6 or 12 because of the 192-bit bus. They wanted to go with a wider bus, giving it more memory performance and also allowing them to be able to go with a number higher than 6. If they were going to go with either a 4 or an 8 gigabyte variant, they would have had to reduce the memory bus width down to 128 gigabits. Wow, 128 bits, that's a lot. Gigabits, that's a lot of bits. They would have had to have dropped it down to a 128-bit bus, which would have then allowed them to be able to run 8 gigabytes of VRAM. But with a narrower memory bus, they would have had lesser performance as well. But I just wanted to kind of respond to that real quick because it is a response I received from NVIDIA when I talked about it being just a memory allocation circle jerk between AMD and NVIDIA and who has the most RAM. We know AMD has the most RAM, but one of the things for today's video is actually going to be how does that RAM actually affect your gaming experience? We know that 6 gigabytes of VRAM these days in 2021 with modern titles is probably not going to cut it, which means it makes sense that they went with the 12 gigabytes versus the 6 gigabytes if that's the limitations they were going to have on the 192-bit bus. See, when it comes to memory performance, it's not just how much of it do you have. That's just the size of the container. Now imagine the size of the container has an opening at the top, and how fast that memory can get in and out of it is going to depend on two things. One, the size of the opening, being your bus width, and then two, how fast that information can get in and out of that bucket, being your pump speed, or in this case, the memory speed itself. So we have faster memory now, a bigger opening, and a bigger container, which theoretically is going to give you much better performance than if you had a smaller container with a smaller opening with the same size pump. And when I say same size pump, it's all GDDR6, which is going to give you very fast speeds. But if the fast speed is filling a smaller container that takes longer for it to cycle, then you can see there why those three figures can start to play in as to why they chose 12 gigabytes on the 3060. The reason why AMD is pretty much putting 16 gigabytes in everything is because they're kind of using the same bus for everything. So I think it's a little bit simpler over there, but they're not directly comparison apples to apples in the architecture. That's something we already know. So what we're going to do is we've got our 3060 loaded up on our test bench here. And the reason why I'm doing these tests right now to show you, a lot of people get really hung up on the amount of VRAM that's in a card on making their buying choice. And the reason why I even brought up these 10 series cards is because if you were sitting here, let's say hypothetically these are 3060 cards, and you go, oh, I could save some money by going with a lesser amount of card, but it's all the same. Well, you're going to see right now that although we have 12 gigabytes on a 3060, some titles are not going to utilize anywhere near that, and some might get somewhat near there. But what you're going to find on the 3060 as well is that you have a bit of a surplus when it comes to the amount of memory. One other thing I want to point out is even the 10 gigabytes on the 3080, unless we're doing 4K gaming with high resolution texture packs on super modern titles, do we see it go anywhere near that 10 gigabytes of VRAM. It's nice to have. Remember, it is GDDR6X, which means it's going to be a faster memory. And it's not only how big is the container and how big is the opening, how big is your pump, which is the speed. The pump matters as well. You have the biggest opening and the biggest container, and if you have a slow, dribbly pump, it's still going to suck, right? Use that metaphor however you want. All right, so what we're going to do right now is we're going to use Afterburner here to kind of show you guys some specs on what's happening with the card. That way we can sort of give you guys some real world experience here, or I guess examples of what's happening. What we're looking at here is a couple of different things. This is our GPU temperature. That's the usage of our GPU. This is Rise of the Tomb Raider. The menu is actually a 3D rendered item, which is why it's at 100%. This is our core clock. This is our memory usage in megabytes. Now remember, this is a 12 gigabyte card. So as you can see in the menu, we're only using just under 2 gigabytes. We're gonna change a couple settings here. I'm starting with some older titles. We'll move our way to some of the newer, more demanding titles like Borderlands 3, stuff like that, to see if we can't get our usage to go anywhere near the 12 gigabytes. Because what I'm trying to show you here actually is that 8 gigs is really the sweet spot, and anything above 8 gigabytes is pretty much going to be overkill, which, to be honest, I'd rather have more memory than I need, because having not enough memory means you have to lower either your resolutions or your settings to get your memory under control. Now, one of the biggest factors of the amount of memory that you use are not just the settings, but the resolution at which you are applying those settings to. Specifically stuff like MSAA or any sort of anti-aliasing that is any sort of scaling anti-aliasing. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the settings here. This particular test, we have a custom preset. Everything is pretty much as high as it'll go. The resolution which we're running here is 1080p. Yes, this is an ultra wide panel. You can see the black bars. We have it set to actual 1080p. I'm gonna go ahead and set this to 1440 right now, because I'm curious to, even sitting in the menu, so even in the menu, we saw about a 200 megabyte jump in terms of usage. But I feel a lot of people that are going to be running 60 series cards are probably going to be on a 1080p or 1440p panel, which is perfectly fine. I'm going to run this up to SSAA, or Super Sampling Anti-Aliasing 4X. And you can see that added just a little bit. Look at that, we're almost at 2,400 megabytes of usage, again, just in the menu. Now if we jump this up to 1440, look at that, almost 3 gigabytes of VRAM. Now what's funny is, this title existed at the time the 1063 gig did. As you can see, we're using almost a full amount of frame buffer in this graphics card in the damn menu. So you can see why we were pretty mad about the 3 gig ever even existing back in 2016, 2017. One thing you might notice too is as the game is loading, you're seeing the VRAM actually start to load as well. Yes, this is the very beginning of the game, but as you can see, we're already at 6 gigabytes of VRAM. So, had they chosen going with the 6 gigabyte option rather than 12 gigabyte, you can see how in an older title like this, even in 1080p without maxing out things like anti-aliasing, we would already be pretty damn close to that. But one thing to keep in mind when it comes to memory though, is just like your system memory is, it's not gonna just automatically climb to whatever arbitrary number it wants to pull. The API knows
the problem is that
if you want to be the best,
At a time in the world where things were feeling less and less certain, there was one thing you could always count on: the heroics. Our planet's team
Back on his feet, Molly. He's been sleeping in a bar.
How does that happen?
We just go back, get them out of there. He's saved.
Energize.
No!
It's too late. We're about to do another attempt during the same time frame.
We don't want to bump into ourselves.
We need something that can direct.
Oh, it's Dupree. I mean, I told you, his mother moved to Florida with that yoga idiot, and all of his friends are married, including myself. He's got nowhere to go. He's like an orphan. Yeah. Wait a second. What's all this?
This is that celebration we were supposed to have about your promotion.
Oh, good God, the Carabinieri have arrived.
Feast upon my magnificence.
Hang on, stand aside. What's that?
Boadicea conquered the entire Roman army using something very similar to this, so I should be able to easily conquer 4 hoodies in a stolen Datsun.
What happens if you just pull up next to the pavement and there are some women and children walking along?
They'll have their legs cut off.
Around to east of Cochrane, which ones, when they were sold, because some of these models were sold in the last couple of years, by going to www.com for more information.
680 news time, 5:55. There's a new law in a...
I am pretty much the perfect multipler owner, driver, you know, grey hair, glasses, questionable style, you know, penchant for getting freaky. Welcome to Automotive Misfits, the show about cars that people dare not buy for reasons like reliability, expense, or because your friends told you to stay away from them, or because they're really ugly. This week I've got the Fiat Multipla, and I'm going to tell you, is it a car that you should buy or avoid? Probably going to be avoid, because it's literally the most hideous thing in the world. We good? What?
You can't say that.
Why?
Can we just do a normal intro?
Have you seen this car?
Yes, I've seen it. I know you don't like it, but just get on with it and man up.
That gives me an idea. Right then, ladies and gentlemen, let us address the elephant in the room. I, definitely not Alex Kirsten, am driving a Fiat Multipla. So let's go find out what that's like. Now the reason why this car is an automotive misfit is one, because it's so ugly that no one really wanted to buy it. The second reason why it's an automotive misfit is because of its completely bizarre 3+3 layout. So the first thing you notice is that you sit really nice and high up. The Multipla is pretty much as wide as a van because we've got the 3-seat configuration. We've also got van style wing mirrors, which is actually useful. It eliminates the blind spot. We've got the 1.9 JTD diesel engine here with around 105 horsepower. Power and torque and everything like that isn't really important for a car like this. What is important is that you should know that it's a pleasant car to drive. Genuinely pleasant, genuinely easy car to drive. I've got amazing visibility around me. The windows are super low so I can literally see everything. You look at the car and you think, oh God, what is that? I mean, seriously, that is a car that not even its own mother could love. It looks like a dolphin that's had a really bad time. Or if you take a high-heeled shoe and then you put the high-heeled shoe on a woman's foot and the woman's foot is quite large and then you've got that lump that goes over the high-heeled shoe. It is hideous, but it is also a charming car. Its design brief was to be a 6-seater, a family car, nice and short, easy to park, and that are things that it does extremely well.
As well as this, it also has some dazzling features on the interior.
Women know too much. I'm all for girls that don't know too much.
Pay attention to the pitch.
Oh, no, she knows nothing.
He's actually telling us things.
Let us start with storage. We have a glove box here on the driver's side. We have a glove box here on the passenger side. We obviously have a 6-seat configuration and the middle seat is actually set further back than the rest of the seats. We've got a whole bunch of buttons because we have a double sunroof, and the double sunroof buttons are just here, which is pretty cool. There we go, that one works. And that one also works, or it was working.
You actually look quite...
Sexy?
Yeah, okay.
Really?
Yeah.
We'll go with sexy. Do I look sexy in my Multipla?
Yeah.
I am pretty much the perfect Multipla owner. Driver. You know, grey hair, glasses, questionable style. You know, penchant for getting freaky. And my favourite thing on the interior is the safety aspect, specifically on the gear lever. This isn't a car that you drive aggressively, so if you do lend it to your friend and they do start driving it aggressively, then the car will punish you. Say I'm going from first to second rather aggressively, bang, bang, oh! And then the gear lever just falls off. And we have quite possibly the largest sun visors ever fitted to a motor vehicle. I mean, look at the size of that. Woof! I literally cannot see anything. I am actually a fan of the Multipla. It's hideous, but it's so ugly that it's kind of cool now. A car like this is something you'll buy because it's practical, because it's spacious, because it's easy to drive, and it's definitely not something that you'd buy to modify. Or is it? Because, ladies and gentlemen, the car you see behind me is not a Photoshop. It is a real car and it belongs to you, Tarek. Dude, you've driven all the way from Hamburg, 600 miles, 1,000 kilometers to be here today, and you've driven in your Multipla. It's pretty badass. Let's go for a little walk around.
Tarek's dream of owning a Multipla, like any self-respecting car guy, was born as a joke at work, which, as you can see, evolved into something that's taken on a life of its own. The Multipla you see here is the world's lowest, loudest, and most labor-intensive, and has been transformed from ugly duckling to a car that even your nan would look twice at.
So we have two colors wrap, one in matte chrome, red, and one in digital print. It's the only body kit which you can buy for a Fiat Multipla. I was looking a long time, for several months, how to get the Multipla very low. So there's nothing what you can buy for Fiat Multipla. This have a K-Sport air ride in it, and so it's the only one on the world. This is just made specially for me, for this car. From the cat and on steel, 3 point.
All custom made, right?
Yeah, it's all custom made. 3-inch, from the cat.
What else is cool about this? We've obviously got a wing for downforce.
Yeah,
because
we have massive downforce on
Yeah,
it.
you have
We
massive
need it.
downforce, yeah.
We have 80-inch alloys on here. So normally the Multipla have 16 or 17. We used distance plate to get the alloys wider from the body. On here we have our air pressure from the air ride. When we push the buttons on here, we can see how much pressure we have on the suspension.
Awesome. That's already quite loud, but I have a feeling that's not as loud as it gets.
Yeah, we have some future on it.
Oh my god! Wow! That's quite a roar, isn't it?
Camber Joe 2.0, as this car is known, rides incredibly well and sounds like a normal car with the exhaust in pipe down, this is Germany mode. Open the exhaust valves up though, and this thing emits 127 decibels of noise, which is exactly the point at which tinnitus and permanent hearing loss begins. Seriously, I looked that one up and everything. And to put that into context, an average car emits around 75 decibels.
Join 888 Casino today and play with £88 for free. Enjoy nail-biting thrills with hundreds of high-paying slots and live casino games with real hosts and dealers.
Yeah! Oh god, I feel like such a hooligan. I feel like such a punk. He was loving it. We've got one fan. It's just very, very well thought out and incredibly well laid out car. And this one's obviously a tuner car, so it ticks all of the boxes. Noise, fun, being experimental, being different. This is all of those things and more.
Despite the noise this thing makes on the road, the funny thing about this Multipla is that it's never actually doing much speed, which is great for keeping your license, but really messes with your mind when you hear what you think is a fast as hell car going at walking pace.
Oh, this is probably the most fun I've had driving so slowly. And just because your car goes quickly, that doesn't mean that you're going to have more fun than I am. So as you can see, that is what you can do with a Fiat Multipla, but back in the real world, we have an honest MPV 6-seater with a nice diesel engine, which is great to drive. You can pick up Multiplas from anywhere between £400 to £1,000. They'll have some sort of mileage on them. This car's got 110,000. This is the top spec because we've got the roof and we've got the electric everything. So for something like this, expect to pay around £1,000, maybe a few £100 less. So value for money again is great with these cars. You get loads of cool toys, you get the biggest sun visors known to man, you get the ugliest car known to man. But at the end of the day, you have something that's going to be reliable, it's going to be practical, spacious. I'm a big fan. It's become so easy to hate them. The internet makes a joke about them day after day. So why would you be attracted as a buyer to a car that is the internet's joke? But cast that aside, because as a car, it drives nicely, super practical, super versatile, super economical, and just easy to drive. What more can you want? Go for a Fiat Multipla. I hope you guys enjoyed this last episode of Automotive Misfits featuring the Fiat Multipla. For more episodes, click here, and to subscribe to Car Throttle, click down there. Chase me! Chase me! Alright.
It's me, sailing in the dark, looking for my heart under your skin. It's me, and I need to apologize. Do you know what makes me sad? I was fine while you are melting down inside. They throw you burning iron, you're drawn in the fire. It's been time that I...
Gonna go run everything! Move right away! Oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god, Jesus. This is the sketchiest thing I've ever driven! And I've had some really ugly girlfriends in the past. Oh god, that was disgusting. Hello and welcome to Car Throttle. My name's Alex and the man to my left needs no introduction. Kevin Nix is the creator of the world's fastest shed. You'll have seen that on the channel already. Bloody hell! And also this. But before we get into this, a quick reminder. Today is Tuesday the 26th of May and under the government guidelines, we are allowed to film. We are maintaining social distance. Poke out your arm, there we go. We're about 3 meters apart, so we are abiding by all of the rules. Right, to business. Mr. Kevin Nix, what have you brought me this time?
Fun. I came up with the idea of building something to try and make people be creative at home. Not build barrows of speed, but you know, mend the bench, get whatever tools they got, whatever ability, get themselves away from all the bad news and focus on something else. And I also realised that some people haven't got any money, especially the self-employed. So I set myself a zero budget. I was given a moped that didn't run, so I got that running. All the steel, it was all odd bits and pieces I had left from when I built that and when I built the racing shed. Some of it was off of an old broken wheelbarrow. The wheels came off of a sack truck that I had in the garage. I painted it silver because I've got silver paint at home.
So you have begged, borrowed and stolen from yourself to create this, the barrow of speed. Top speed of this, roughly?
Around 40 miles an hour.
Okay, and for people who might not know, what is 40 miles an hour like on a wheelbarrow?
40 miles an hour standing up, honestly, is plenty fast enough.
Now obviously, because you built it, you know the ins and out of it, you know every rivet, every bolt.
I do.
What would you do differently this time and what is your favourite feature of this?
I might make it a little bit lighter if I could choose to buy the steel.
And what's your favourite feature?
Riding it. It's just such a hoot. Electric start, you just stand on it and away you go.
It's just a bit of fun and yeah, something to hopefully put a smile on people's faces who are going through a bit of a bad time at the moment. Anyway, enough talking, can I have a go?
Yeah, you've got to put your safety kit on, you're not riding it like that. Go and put them on and you can have a go on the barrow of speed.
Awesome. Stay there 1 minute, all right? I'll be back in a sec.
That's better.
Right, so it's time for me now to have a quick go on the barrow of speed. Kevin offered to show me how to use it. I've declined because I want to work it out myself. But there were two things that you said to me. Don't accelerate too hard, don't brake too hard. Oh, and there was a third as well, don't crash, because you don't want to wipe up my blood. So first things first, I think I need to take it off the stand. No, I'm telling you, I need to switch it on. Turn the key. I think I'm ready. No, I'm not ready. I need to take it off the stand. Whoa, whoa. It won't flop over, will it? See you later. Oh. Woo. Here we go. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. This is actually quite scary. Woo! Oh my god, this is really scary. Look at me go, Mum! Oh god, this is really sketchy. Let me try the brakes. Ooh. Ooh. Oh god, it's fast as well. This is, oh god, it's a workout. My hands hurt. My forearms hurt already. Please, Ethan driving the car in front, do not slow down suddenly because there is nowhere for me to go. My arms are ruined. It feels like it weighs, oh God, like 40 kilos in each hand. Right, let's get some speed up. Oh, I'm going for it. I'm going for it. Ah! This is
the new 888 Poker Experience. Use the new vertical layout with one hand in portrait mode. 888 Poker, made to play.
the sketchiest thing I've ever driven! And I've driven a motorised sofa. I've driven a shed. And I've had some really ugly girlfriends in the past. Oh, now I'm getting into it. I'm scared of touching the brakes. When you touch the brakes as well, the whole wheelbarrow moves upwards. Oh God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Beep, 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 beep. Indicators, non-existent.